Sicon Distribution. You'll see that this is spread across 9 different modules effectively. Each of them are licensed separately, and then you can buy them all together. That's absolutely fine. Lots of different touch points from Sicon Distribution to the other modules within our journey. It isn't just for organisations that buy product and sell product. It is also for organisations that may do a little bit of manufacturing as well. So there's some key things to talk about there. There's also functionality for anybody using any form of stock management that may be very useful. If you're bringing in product from abroad, then Container Management will do a great job of tracking that progress of a shipment from China across the sea to you. And if you're organisations which have a desire to understand what product and stock position should look like as a result of historical information, then Future Sales is the one. I always refer to this as the enhancement pack on steroids. It's got so much more. They are individual modules in their own right, but they do all talk to each other, and you'll see that little journey come together. So if we look at warehouse replenishment, basically enabling you to be able to look at your individual warehouses and be able to top them up from a feed warehouse. Material planning, the lighter version of true MRP without the necessity for manufacturing, although it could be that one too. Obviously doesn't give you capacity planning, but does of course give you all of the suggested purchase orders based on demand. Reserves and call-offs will do a great job of being able to look at your sales and purchase contracts with your customers. So to give you that at the point of entry, this particular customer has a special price over a period for a special amount. And likewise on the purchase side, there's even the ability for you to be able to do your reserves and call-offs. So to things like manage consignment stocks. If I'm buffering stock for a customer, it effectively means that I can ring fence it. In other words, allocate it. So rather than putting on a false sales order, if I create a reserve, it will allocate the stock to that reserve. And at the point of entry of saying, yep, customer actually wants it, it will say there's a reserve on for it, so you can draw down on the reserve. We are also going to look at pot management, much bigger than just the few bits and pieces that I'm going to talk to you about today. So maybe needs to be explored a little more. Things like delivery KPIs, supplier quantity breaks, advanced landed costs. We can talk about that all day if we really wanted to. Our whole concept of pre-allocation. So you don't have to be a manufacturer to be able to allocate product to a finished item. Pre-allocation, soft allocation, effectively enabling us to be able to connect sales orders and purchase orders together. You're going to see a little bit more of that. I've mentioned Container Manager already. Stock Matrix is pretty niche, but for anybody that is looking for a solution that would manage color and size, that kind of X and Y grid type thing of being able to say, yeah, I've got my manufacturer that provides pencil skirts to us, and they do those in various colors and various sizes. We can create the SKUs, and then we can also create an environment whereby from a purchase perspective or a sales perspective, we can enter that in via a grid. So I would be given a nice little grid to say, I want X amount of size 4, size 6, size 8. So quick and easy order entry from both purchase and sales side. Last one is stock management. And again, does way more than we're going to be able to cover today. Lots of nice little nuggets of information in there, but the primary ones we are going to see today. So we'll go in and have a little look at those. That's distribution in a nutshell. So what have I done in the background? First things first, if we just take you into the stock control and we go into my stock list and we have a quick look at my Sicon standard umbrella, which is sitting down here. If I go in and amend the details of that, you will see that there are some very specific things switched on. First things first, it knows that we have a minimum stock level that we want to come back to. And of course, Future Sales is going to pick that up for me. So in the calculation of minimum stocks that you'll see in Future Sales, it'll understand whether or not we need to maintain that minimum stock level based on historical usage. It's a very, very clever little piece of information. If we go into the Sicon tab, you'll see that there is indeed the distribution tab sitting over here, where some of the things that we are going to talk about today are switched on. So because stock management is switched on, we're going to be able to understand whether or not this is a discontinued item, and we're also going to be able to put in a superseded item. From a future sales perspective, I can round my forecast minimum stock quantity up to, and I can put in some precision there. If I want to exclude it from the minimum stock calculation, I can, and I can also determine what the safety margin of this particular product is going to be. And then when we look at landed costs and container management, I can also determine the length, width, height, and it will then calculate the volume for me, and I can put in a weight. If we're going to fill up a container, I need to know how much capacity I'm going to have to be able to fill up that container. So that's where those measurements will come into play. That's how my system is currently set up as far as a stock item is concerned. And if we take you into my sales order list, you'll see that we have a nice little sales order on for Acme dated today. That sales order, because they would like to buy from us, has got some umbrellas on it. So our standard umbrella and our wooden umbrella handles. In here, as you can see, I have a number of other things switched on because Sicon Distribution is switched on, and more specifically because SOP management is switched on. Those things are the ability for you to be able to add historical lines, copy lines. There's a telesales input, which is really clever. The reason why I particularly like this one is because when I enter in telesales input, anything that I type into, whether it's the item code or the item description, it's going to search for it without any wildcards. And I particularly like that. Then I can literally just do my quick entry and then add those to my sales order. The other thing that you'll also get with any of the distribution modules is the distribution button. So one single place of entry to enable me to go in and drill into the level of detail that I might want to see. And it will also show me things like my stock movements and my history of an item. So I particularly like telesales. We could obviously have our templates and the ability for us to be able to copy and paste. There is also, if we just go in and look at that particular item, some other features switched on. So if I just go in and edit that item for my Sicon standard umbrella, I'll of course have got some stock of it, but I don't have enough stock of it to satisfy. Therefore, material planning is going to pick it up for me if you've got material planning switched on. So demand is all there. The other thing that we've also got switched on in here is pre-allocations. As an entity by itself, pre-allocations is going to be able to allow me to be able to see if there are already any existing purchase orders on for that item line. If I don't have enough stock to satisfy my customer requirement, I can see any other purchase orders coming in and associate this particular line to that purchase order. And the relationship is one to many. So I might have one single sales order being satisfied from multiple purchase orders. And likewise, I might have one purchase order that satisfies multiple sales orders. So the relationship is on both sides. As soon as I then receive my purchase order in, it will then automatically allocate it to the pre-allocated entity. So pre-allocations is a thing. Pre-allocations is also a thing as part of our entire manufacturing solution, but it is not unique to it, which is why we can actually give it to those organizations that do need it. When you're planning for your customer demand and your customer is demanding from you that they have the next shipment in line, this is the solution that's going to do it for you. Those pre-allocations can be broken, so you can obviously go in and decide to give it to a more important customer. So there is a pre-allocation screen for you to be able to do that. And we can also include that level of detail in dashboards, which are also available in the distribution package. So pre-allocations is a thing. If I go to save this line now, as you'll see in here, it's saying, okay, there is a sales contract price on for this particular customer. What that effectively means, and it's part of the module which is reserves and call-offs, is that I've entered in a special price for that customer on a special quantity over a period of time, which is now valid for this particular sales order. So at point of entry, it will prompt you to use the available price or prices. So it says, would you like to use the contract price for this order? I'll say yes, and it will say, well, this is what it is. And they've got 8,000 left in that contract for their umbrella special pricing for that customer. So the quantity on this order is 550. That's going to take it off of the 8,000 that they're contracted to. And as you can see, they're going to get a special price of £37. So we say, yep, select that one. Bring that price in. At the same time as that, again, as part of reserves and call-offs, we also have a reserve on for that particular customer. So it may be that despite the fact that I don't have free stock available to allocate to this customer, that there is actually an outstanding reserve that is holding that stock for them. And then again, that's exactly what the system is determined for me here. Would I like to reduce the reserve to use on this order? Now, I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to show you that one separately. So I'm going to say no to the reserve, yes to the contract price. That'll update everything, as you can see. And we can go ahead and save that away with all of the SOP management, reserves and call-off information coming into play. So just two areas where it becomes really cool. So I've got demand. As you can see, my particular sales order, and again, this is where all of the interaction with our other modules comes into play. Obviously, I've got barcoding and warehousing switched on, and many of our distribution clients will have barcoding and warehousing as well. But despite that, this is just the ready to pick flag. As you can see, it says, do you want to save it? Okay, so we have our sales order, which is giving me demand. We may also have our minimum stock levels giving us demand. We may also have forecasts, which give us demand as well. But where distribution and future sales comes into play is the accuracy of those minimum stock levels that we've set and the accuracy of the forecast that we've set. So as part of future sales, when I go to calculate minimum stocks, it'll go away and do exactly that for me. Now, I could run it for everything. I could run it for a particular product group, or I can run it for a single item. I can also filter it down by specific warehouse. I could just run it for everything. What it is effectively going to do is it's going to go away and it's going to look at the last 2 years average monthly demand, the last 1 year and the last 3 months to present for me what it thinks should be the forecasted minimum stock level. It will present the current minimum stock level and then tell me what the percentage change to that is going to be. If I run it for everything, it's going to do it literally for everything. I'm not going to make you wait around for that. I'm just going to do it for a single item. I'm going to do it for my stock item, which today is going to be my espresso cup. And we'll just display that. And it'll go away and do exactly that across each of my warehouses. And it'll display for me the current free stock, the current minimum stock, and the forecasted minimum stock and the percentage change to that. If I need to be able to drill into any of this information, I can. So they become drillable, as you can see. So I can go back in and I can look at where that demand is actually coming from over the months. Again, the distribution button is switched on, so I can go in and look at the view stock movements, the stock history, the previous sales orders, the item balances, all from a single screen in order for me to determine whether or not it is the right thing to do to adjust my minimum stock level to the new value by the system. If it's not, because people are still important in businesses and they need to be able to also add their level of information that they hold in their head too, then I can go in and I can change the forecasted minimum stock accordingly. So where these ones come up as 0, I could go in and say, actually, let's make that 5 and make that 6 and make that 5 as well, and make that 6 and make that 9. So I can add my own intelligence to the output from future sales. I can also go in and show the calculation that sits behind that. So it's the average demand per month divided by the working days in the month, giving me an average daily demand multiplied by my stock cover days to give me, and a safety margin to give me the new forecasted minimum stock. As you can probably imagine, if you're doing this en masse, multiple stock items, this is a really important screen that many people manage on a spreadsheet separately and actually take input from multiple people and stakeholders within the business. This does it all in one place, allowing individuals to be able to interact with it before we then say, go on then, select them all and update all the minimum stock levels. And in one click of a button, that is done. The second thing that future sales does for us is my sales order forecasts. And again, as you can probably imagine, both of these entities within future sales will talk to material planning. If I'm adjusting my minimum stock level, that's the new minimum stock level, my new demand for material planning to pick up. Likewise with my forecast, And again, we'll run it for a single stock item in here, guys, but I can do this monthly or weekly, and I can determine the date range that I want to look back over. So mine's doing it monthly, looking back over the last 12 months. I'm going to put in my stock item in here. So this time we'll have our kettle. It's always a kettle, as you can probably tell by the amount of free stock that I've got. We can also decide what transactions should be included within my forecast. So if it's pure sales, take off the write-offs, the internal issues, the return to the suppliers, the transfers out, the customer free issues, the purchase returns, and just run it for sales orders. But if you are running it from a manufacturing perspective, again, we can also include BOM usage and works order issues as well. So run it for everything, run it for nothing. I could also take out in my exclusions specific sales orders, for instance, which are out of the ordinary. So I might have had one sales order from a particularly large customer who wanted to buy 85,000 of them. That's not indicative of what's going to happen every year. We know that, and we can exclude it from the forecast as well. So I'm just going to display that. And again, by warehouse, it will show me what my usage is over the last 12 months. And I'll ask it to generate me a forecast. So let's just go in and select them all and generate me a forecast for next year. My forecast change is dependent on trend. And again, I can change that if I wanted to. So I could go in here and say, make it a factor of 2, make it a factor of 3, keep it to what the system recommends. And it will then give me what my forecast should be for next year. Now I can run this as many times as I want to look at those forecasts. But in reality, it's the one that I'm cemented on that I'm going to then include in my material planning consideration so that I can create purchase orders to manage my forecast. Again, a human interaction is more than possible. So if I know that December's going to look like a pretty good month, then I can go in and put my own forecast in for that month. I'm going to save that away. I'm going to give it a name. Sorry, Gary. It's our Gary forecast. And we're just going to go in and say save to that. And as you'll see when I go in and view the forecasts, I've run my forecasts many, many, many times. I can run it as many times as I need to, depending on what I want to include, exclude, depending on what transaction types, product groups, individual stock items, whether I do it monthly, weekly, what does it look like before I decide what I want my forecast to be able to be. And my Gary forecast, as you can see, is not currently included in my material planning. So we're just going to pop ourselves into this one and view that forecast, and you'll see down here that I can then say, yeah, okay, that looks perfect. That's exactly what we'd like. Generate me an MRP forecast accordingly. And off it'll go and do exactly that. Forecast is not a dark art. As part of material planning, you can go in and you can enter a forecast on behalf of a customer. You can also go in and enter a forecast manually. You can use future sales to be able to create those forecasts. But at the point of entry of a sales order, if I have a forecast on that's specifically related to my customer, it will prompt me to reduce that forecast down so that I'm not double counting forecast to actual demand. Get super clever. That's future sales in a nutshell, guys. Let's just go in now and have a quick look at reserves and call-offs as part of what we've already done. So inside of my sales order, where it gave me that special price, that was to do with my sales contract. So I might have one or many sales contracts which include one or many parts. Let's just refresh my list. For my umbrella special pricing, which is the special pricing contract that we used as part of my sales order entry. I just go in and amend the contract. You'll see that this is where I can enter in all of the details for one or many items, and it will track for me how many of those we've actually used. So as you can see on my Sicon standard umbrella, contract covers 8,000 at £37. The balance on order is 550. Balance remaining, therefore, on this contract is 7,450, and it's valid until the 30th of June 2026. And if I look at my contract usage, each time it appears on a sales order, you'll see it in here. So you can see how we're breaking that down. I can add more lines from here as well. I can also look at the contract history, so we can actually see who did what and why and when. So if dates have changed or if sales orders have been added, you'll be able to see that in the history, but you can also print the contract for the client. So if we just pop ourselves out of here and up into my spooler, you should be able to see in true Blue Peter style my sales contract. And again, there's everything presented to the customer. So I can do that from both the sales and the purchase side. Principle is exactly the same. We enter in a new purchase order for our supplier. It will then prompt me to choose the special contract price. Where it gets even more clever than that is that if you're using material planning, standard material planning will go away and look at your preferred supplier and your pricing method for that particular stock item. And it might choose list price standard material planning. However, if there's a contract price on for it, it will pick it up. So again, super clever. Let's just pop ourselves into stock management. So some of the things that we didn't see as part of putting a sales order on, the ability for us to be able to look at a SOP order line list. I know it looks really simple, but it's something that standard Sage doesn't give me. Under SOP management, my SOP order line list will do exactly that. It will give me each individual item in a list view that we can use our filters on. It's super clever. I can manage my SOP back orders, so I can go and do allocation from a single screen. I can enter in my SOP templates. There's even the concept of understanding whether or not an order has been lost and therefore including that in my future demand. I could have sold it if I'd had stock of it. I could have sold it if I'd given them the right price. Again, as part of Sicon Distribution, it doesn't matter which one of these modules your purchases, or whether it's a selection of them or all of them or one of them, you'll also get this here, which is called our dashboards. You'll have seen them in some of the other modules, but again, from a distribution perspective, it gives us that on-screen reporting, those SQL queries in a nice, quick and easy way. So I have my general distribution dashboards, as we can see. You'll be able to decide what it is that you'll need to be able to see in these panels. This one shows me all of the pre-allocations, which are outstanding. It shows me expected deliveries today. That's part of my warehouse replenishment utility. Imagine what's happening there. If I'm a barcoding and warehousing client, not only do I want to be able to use barcoding and warehousing for stock accuracy, but I'd also like a little bit of planning capabilities. What have I got coming in tomorrow? Well, how much room do I need to make in my warehouse? That's what expected deliveries today will do for me. My sales contracts and my purchase contracts, those are the dashboards that I've chosen, but these can get super clever and we can do more of those for you. Each individual one might give us something very, very different. So container manager expected this month, completed this month, our sales contracts and purchase contracts. Again, I could wax lyrical about the power of those dashboards. We're just going to pop ourselves in to look at what POP management does. We're going to come back and look at container management in just a second, but POP management, in addition to some of the things that we will actually include in purchase order processing, I also get some really clever things. The supplier catalogue is super clever. For those which are potentially not heavily using stock, or where you have a requirement to look at non-stock items potentially that are on a list from their supplier, this can be imported in. I can then use that when I go in to put a free text item on in my purchase order to use my supplier catalogue. So if I get an updated price list of things that I don't generally stock, where I don't want to create stock items for them because they're not going to be things that we necessarily do on repeat time after time, and we don't want to manage stock of them, we just want the prices, then this is the solution for that. And what's super clever about this is that if you have clients that are using approvals as well, then in the requisition, the supplier catalogue will also be presented when I go to put a free text line on. So for those that are raising requisitions that don't want to use stock management, but do want to be able to have some kind of stock item description, then the supplier catalogue might be very, very handy for them. If I go in and look at my supplier KPIs, again, another one for me, which I think is super clever. Actually have a customer who spent an awful long time putting this information together in a single place and spending days, if not weeks, if not months on an annual basis to present the information that we can very, very quickly. So in here, as you can see, I've got my suppliers, the number of lines on order, how many were early, how many were on time, how many were slightly late. Looks really basic, but it's super clever when you compare that to a customer that's trying to do that level of analysis manually. And obviously, we can give them a KPI score, and we can use that and see that in other areas of the system. My stock item location wizard is in here. My stock inspections are in here. You'll see these in other modules as well, but we've also included them into POP management. I've also got a POP order line list, so very similar to what we did in sales order processing. And when we go into purchase order processing as well, some of those buttons, as in I want to be able to add historical lines into there. So things that I've purchased previously, and go in and say, today my order looks like this, it's this quantity on this line, this line, and this line. So nice quick purchase order entry. Pre-allocations, just to show you that it does indeed exist. There's my pre-allocations dashboard, as you can see, so quite separate. And then we've got our pre-allocation portal, which will actually show me all of the pre-allocations, all of the connections that we have made for everything. So sales orders connected to purchase orders, sales orders connected because I've got manufacturing switched on as well. As you can see, sales orders connected to works orders connected to finished items. That whole concept of reserving stock for when it comes in or when it's built to the entity that it's connected to. So sales orders to purchase orders, kits to sales orders, works orders to sales orders. As you can see, I can create a brand new one from here. So if I have a customer I just want to have a look and do a quick reserve for, I can do that too. So your pre-allocations utility comes into play. And now, based on all of that information, how we purchase, why we purchase, and all of those recommendations, I'm going to run material planning. Running material planning will do exactly what you'd expect it to if you were looking at it from a manufacturing perspective. It's going to tell you what to buy in order to satisfy your manufacturing demand. But in the case of distribution, it's also going to tell you what to buy to satisfy your demand across the board. So when we go into material planning, so when you license material planning, it is purely that material planning. There is no capacity planning in there, but under the material planning umbrella, you will also get the opportunity to enter in forecasts. So where my system in future sales created my forecast for me, this is the bit that gets us to enter in a forecast specific to a customer or enter in a forecast in general for procurement purposes and to be able to import those forecasts as well. However, we're just simply going to go in and run material planning. Well, I would run material planning, but actually, rather than making you watch that, we're just going to go in and look at my previous MRP results, where we should see that my recommendations for my suggested purchase orders are sitting down here, and my Sicon umbrella does indeed have a demand for 1,627 of them. And the reason why we are buying them is based on minimum stock suggestion, our sales order, and indeed a reserve that actually needs it. So all of the reasons why I am purchasing are also connected to my purchase orders. So I can take one or many of these recommendations and then create the purchase orders accordingly. I can also go in here and filter this down by supplier or by stock item. If I'm doing it by supplier and I then want to fill up a container, this will be the way that I can actually see that level of information in order to determine what I should purchase and whether or not I should increase that purchase to fill up my container. But we're going to do exactly that now. So I'm literally just going to take my Sicon standard umbrella. I could take one or many. I'm just literally going to take that one today and say, yes, please create me a purchase order. Material planning doesn't just create purchase orders. It's using approvals or that want to use approvals, and you can switch off the ability for them to be able to create purchase orders and say, I want to create a requisition for approval, so full integration into our approval system. But for the purpose of today's exercise, we're going to go in and say, go on then, create me a purchase order just for that one item. And it will take the pre-allocation with it. There's some settings that sit into the background to determine whether or not you automatically switch that box to on or not. Your choice. Mine is actually switched that way. If I go create now, it will do exactly that, create a purchase order for me. If I go in and tick it and then create it, it will pop it onto the screen. So we'll do exactly that and create our purchase order accordingly. So when I'm running material planning, if I'm doing it for multiple items, which of course you would in the real world, then it'll create as many purchase orders as it needs to, depending on the number of suppliers and potentially the number of warehouses that you're looking to satisfy. But again, that can be done via a setting that sits in the background to determine how you actually want to group them together. My purchase order, as you can see, has been created. And in the material planning tab, it tells me why I've done that. And because I have a pre-allocation to certain entities, if I go in and view my pre-allocations now, you can see that this particular purchase order is partially reserved to my sales order and partially reserved to my stock reserve line as well. Just going to pop ourselves in here just to look at some of the things that I mentioned were switched on because we have other distribution modules switched on. So we've got POP management switched on, therefore I'm going to be able to add historical lines if this was a brand new purchase order. I'd also be able to create my pre-allocation directly from the purchase order at any point. So when it's live, I can create pre-allocations for that stock coming in to other entities that might demand it. I also have the ability in here to be able to go in and add that line to a container. So I could add to an existing container, or I could create a brand new container. We're going to go in and create a brand new one. I've already configured into the background what the container size is, and based on the amount of product that I have and that size and width and volume and weight, it'll determine for me whether or not that container is going to get filled up or not. We're going to show you that in just a second. So let's put my actual container number in here. The whole process of this means that I'm not just looking at capacity, I'm also going to be looking at tracking that container in its journey. The product that's on here is pre-allocated to my sales order. Therefore, that entire process of being able to see where my stock is that's pre-allocated to me in its journey becomes more than possible using the tracking facility behind Container Manager. So I'm going to add a new container in here with a requested delivery date of the 30th of September and create my container. So container number 42 has now been created. Like I say, I might have actually added it to an existing container as well. We're going to go in and have a little look at that in just a second. But when I click OK to that, you can see here it's basically saying, would you like to use the delivery date associated with the container as the requested delivery date for this purchase order line? I'll say yes to that. And of course, that will be traceable through my pre-allocation back from my sales order as well. So all of those things talking to each other along the way. Just give ourselves a supplier reference. Again, because I've got it as a mandatory document, guys, it's also using Sicon Documents for me. So I'm going to go in and add the original copy of the purchase quote because I've said that it's mandatory. You don't have to, of course, but because we are, let's have our Sage logo just as our document. So we're just going to store away in there and our purchase order that's new, but it is also part of an entire journey of satisfying my umbrellas from my original sales order that were pre-allocated, that may have been recommended on material planning because of that demand, but also knows that it needs more of them because there is a reserve and there's a minimum stock level that's been calculated by our future sales solution for calculation of minimum stocks that also includes our forecasts from future sales. We're just going to pop ourselves back into the distribution module. If we just go into Container Manager and into my container management list, you'll see that we do indeed have container number 42. And if we just go in and amend the container, you'll see that we are indeed over, because it's red, our maximum weight for that container. If I go to add lines, it will say you're overweight. It doesn't stop you doing it. It's just that additional piece of information that allows you that extra level of functionality. In my tracking info, we can go in and we can choose a profile. For me, I'm just going to use my shipment profile, which gives me my first offshore port, second sea stage 1 see stage 2, UK port arrival, received at depot, and the individual stages and therefore days in those stages. The idea behind this is that when you then receive information, when it gets to first overshore port, that's the stage that it's at, that you can then update the tracking information. You can report any problems, add any notes, confirm it to that stage, and put the actual date that it arrived there. If the actual date that it arrives is the 21st of September, then the individual days that it takes from stage to stage will be rolled forward and the provisional dates will be amended accordingly. Therefore, the expected delivery date will roll forward and we can update the purchase order, which in turn will update the pre-allocation, which in turn is visible to my sales order. I can not just add multiple things to my container, but I can also then use that container. You can see it's going to update my PO lines accordingly, but I can use that container to receive everything that's on the container when it comes in. And if I can do that here, guess what? I can also do it in barcoding and warehousing. So if you are a container manager client and it is switched on and you are also using barcoding and warehousing, and there's 100 things that come in on my container, then I can receive the whole container and take images using Sicon Documents to then push that back into each of the purchase orders and to my container to confirm delivery of all items on my container. Stock matrix. So in here, if we look at our pencil skirts, as you can see, I've got my size and color. In my stock items, we have created a number of individual SKUs off of the back of me simply saying my pencil skirts come in a variety of colours and sizes, create my SKUs for me. If we then want to choose one of these, so if I was just to choose my 16 NVY on a sales order, so let's just do that ever so quickly, order processing into my sales order list. Might as well put it on for good old Acme again. Go in and add my item, which is my 16 NVY. And because it knows that it is part of a stock matrix group, it will say, do you want to continue adding it as a normal item? Or would you like to continue your order from the stock matrix screen? I'll say yes to that. And then again, it's not just the one thing that they want to order. It's a variety of different things, and we can enter our quantities in for our 2 in a size 4 in red, our 6 in a size 10 in blue, etc., and add those to my sales order accordingly, and likewise on the purchase side. Again, super clever, but a little bit niche, but it can be not just used for clothing manufacturers, it's all sorts of things. So again, your choice. I'm going to add those lines to my sales order, nice and quick and easy. The last one, warehouse replenishment, where I just want to show you my shortage transfers, which you will have seen in other modules. Stock shortage transfers is part of service. It's also part of barcoding and warehousing. It's also part of the enhancement pack. But in here, coupled with my stock replenishment, I can set a group of warehouses that replenish each other. So my group is the Sicon group, where the source warehouse is warehouse and where we're looking to satisfy demand from other warehouses. I'm going to choose my factory as my other warehouse, and you'll see in here that we have some recommendations. And in this particular case, a transfer that needs to take place from my warehouse to my destination warehouse. Concept behind that would be my factory, my manufactured stock potentially that needs to be replenished from my distribution warehouse. And the other one in practice, in the use case where this is used very often, is where you have engineer vans set up as warehouses where they are depleting their stock on a regular basis that you want to be able to then replenish from your distribution warehouse. So not only will it give you the recommendation, but it will then enable you to be able to create the transfer accordingly. I mean, if you've seen stock transfers, The idea behind the stock transfer is that you're going to be able to create an entity where you can dispatch your stock transfer, and you can pick it and pack it and dispatch it just like you would a sales order in barcoding and warehousing, or you can create a pick list for it, of course, manually. It'll then pop itself into an in-transit status, still your stock, but it's not available to be sold. And then once it's received into the receiving warehouse, you can again receive it just like you would a purchase order. So the whole stock replenishment routine, what warehouse feeds another warehouse, can be created via stock replenishment, and then create the transfer accordingly to manage the movement of that stock.